We are at the height of the major cycle, or the first major cycle of 2018. It's ELEAGUE Major Boston, and we've got our 8 legends, and that's a pretty exciting time for all said and done. A lot of people tend to put the whole thing down. A lot of people have been giving us a lot of slack on social media. For me personally, you know, none of that really matters. The bottom line is that this is a major. This is the major, the first major of 2018, and you know, this is the World Championship, so you know, maybe you might be, you know, holding your hedge bets about the likes of Quantum Bellator Fire or whoever making their way through the Swiss group stage. You may be holding your reservations about a certain roster not being able to play. You may be a Liquid fan who's a bit salty about the fact that they did go out of the last hurdle. Or you may be an SK fan who, despite them still having a very good chance to win this major, still want to see them play with bolts. That's fine, that's your opinion, but for me, none of that matters, because at the end of the day, we have our 8 rosters. This is how it's going to play out, so make the best of the situation, and we're going to be doing a little bit of pick and predictions and analysis for it. I'm going to break this video down into 5 sections. Number 1, the first 4 will be each individual match that we currently have announced on the quarterfinal stage. And I'm going to go ahead and go through those, predict them, break them down into my own analytical viewpoint, and present them as my predictions for the first round of the playoff bracket. The next thing I'm going to do after those 4 is I'm going to go to section 5, which will be the pick'em actual predictions. I'm going to go ahead and go through the whole bracket and kind of present to you how I think the whole thing will play out. So we'll start with the first match. We'll start with FaZe versus Mousesports, which is a really, really close match. We've already seen it once at the end of the last year, ECS Cancun. Very, very close, epic match. No one really expected Mousesports to get there, but after that performance, I have a lot of hope for Mousesports to really go far in this particular major, and I feel like that there was an upset opportunity, especially when you consider the way that they've kind of been researching and readjusting. I think there's a great opportunity to adjust, because only a few rounds need to go different for Mousesports to win the ECS Championship. And I feel like that's really the main driving point for them to improve this major. So I'll be curious to be keeping an eye on their intricacies. I'll be curious to see how they'll be able to do against FaZe in that particular regard. That being said, though, FaZe still have a pretty fantastic map pool when it comes to taking on Mousesports. And for that matter of fact, Mousesports have a fantastic map pool when it comes up to FaZe. FaZe's permaban is Cobble, so I imagine that they'll probably remove that first when it comes to the map pick ban phase. And I imagine that as a result, Mousesports should be able to get Nuke in there. And they've already beaten FaZe on Nuke. It was a 16-14, so it remains to be seen whether they can replicate the same sort of performance. But that probably is the strongest opportunity for Mousesports to get themselves kick-started in this series. Outside of that, we've got a couple of different maps which are kind of like, you know, very strong maps of both sides, like Mirage. Mirage will be a very good map to see both of these guys go at, because, you know, they're both statistically the best map for each team. And as a result, I feel like it's just going to produce the best Counter-Strike if we have that in. I imagine that they might, because, you know, although FaZe will be at a slight disadvantage to potentially have an upset against Mousesports, they have got, like, the 5 best players in the game, at least in the European scene. So that's something to consider as well. You know, the form of both these sides, they are 2 different caliber of teams. FaZe Clan are the rock stars, and Mousesports are almost the misfits, if you will take that as you will. So I think that the map pool and the pick ban phase is going to come out to be Mirage, Nuke, and Inferno. I think that just kind of makes the most amount of sense. Obviously, FaZe permaban and Cobble, so that'll get out first. Mousesports removing Overpass, because that's also their permaban, and one of the best maps for the likes of FaZe. And then obviously they'll go into picks, and FaZe will pick Mirage, their best map, and Mousesports would pick Nuke, which is the best chance that they have to defeat FaZe in this particular case. Then after that, you're looking at like Train and Cash, which I think are going to be the next couple of bans. I think FaZe is going to ban Train because it's, you know, the next best map left for Mousesports, one of their default picks. And we want to get rid of that as much as possible, because it's not necessarily FaZe's greatest map. It is a good map for them, but not an amazing one. Definitely not the forefront of the pool. And meanwhile, Mousesports will ban Cash, because that is, you know, the next worst map for them in the pool out of the ones that have been picked and banned against. And that, of course, would leave Inferno, which is a great common ground to me. I imagine that FaZe will get their map pick, and Mousesports should get their map pick, just because of how radically different those guys are. If Mousesports do upset Mirage, though, then we could be looking at a 2-0, which is where I really think things will be getting very hot up in that particular booth in the arena. But if we do go to map 3, which I think is the most likely situation, I think this is going to be a 2-1 series. You're looking at Inferno, where both teams have played it extremely often. It is their highest played map when you take a look at statistics in the last 3 months. Both have a similar win rate over the last 3 months. And it was a map that was featured at ECS, where it actually went to double overtime. FaZe ended up winning that one, had them fantastically. And they've gone on to have a fantastic form as well over the next couple of over the last couple of weeks in the major itself. They went 3-0 in the group stage. Mousesports went 3-2 in the group stage. Bit of a shame, really, but they had to go through some pretty strenuous opponents to get there. In particular, Space Soldiers was one of the more standout names. They had Astralis as well, but Astralis haven't really been on form, so I'm not sure whether I want to count that. But that being said, you know, FaZe, I think, had the better run of opponents in their 3-0. They had, I think it was SK at the very last hurdle, which managed to put them over 3-0. It's fantastically good stuff, a very, very good match, and probably a preview to come later on in the grand finals, because they are both on opposite sides of the bracket. So maybe we might be seeing that FaZe SK final one more time. I think that would be the most appropriate thing, but we'll get to that a little bit later on. For now, I'm going to go ahead and pin FaZe to win this one again. I just feel like the talent is there. I feel like that they have everything that they need. The pressure is on. It is a major, and we've known that these guys can show up or break under the pressure. But I think in this case, they're going to show up. You know, last major, they went out 0-3 in the group stage, so they really broke under that pressure. This time around, they've really begun to thrive over it. 3-0 in the group stage, top seed in the tournament. And I think it's going to be a very fun time for FaZe. I think they're going to be advanced to face off against either Na'Vi or Quantum Bellator Fire. And I think probably most people will pin a decent guess as to which one I'm going to pick for this one. I've had this bad habit of putting QB Fire down at every single hurdle they come across. In the first round of the Swiss stage, I was like, yeah, I don't really see them winning this one, but they won it. And the next round, I was like, yeah, but this is a bigger challenge. They won that. It's like, there's no way they can go 3-0. They didn't go 3-0. They went 2-1, and then they went 3-1 after that. So, a bit of a bad habit on my part, but I really do think this time that this is the hurdle that they will drop, because the format changes completely. Is like, you know, complete 180 from what we had before. It was a Swiss system designed for upsets, best of ones, where you can't properly predict it. And if someone has a bad veto, then QB Fire can really exploit that. QB Fire can really go in with a bit of research and really try to pin something down and prepare a lot. So the opportunities are rife for them to win a best of one that many times in a row. This is a best of 3 though, and that's where the consistency and results start to come up. And into the bottom line, it's just the bottom line. Na'Vi have had much more consistent results. They've had a pretty dire lack of form. So I think that for QB Fire, this is the best kind of draw they could have gotten when it comes down to their team. So they've gotten a FaZe Clan or an SK Gaming or a Fnatic or hell, even a Mousesports or even G2 or Cloud9. Any one of those teams, and I think they would be out for 100%. I wouldn't even need to break this one down. I wouldn't even need to go through any sort of analysis, just because there's no way. I cannot see a world with any one of those cases. With Na'Vi, maybe, if Simple goes down, if Simple doesn't have a great performance and the rest of his teammates won't be there to support him, then QB Fire will be going on to face off against FaZe, and then really, after that, I do not think there's a way they can win against FaZe or even Mousesports. But we will break this one down anyway. Got some pretty decent map pools, some kind of ones that fit into each other relatively well. The main thing about QBF's ban sort of strategy is that they tend to float nuke quite a lot. They don't play nuke. They aren't amazing at nuke. They aren't fantastic at nuke. But they tend to like float it whenever they play up against other opponents. The problem with this is that you take a look at their results over the last 3 months, and for the most part, they were all just against, you know, non-contenders at a major level. They aren't against your Na'Vis. They aren't against your FaZes. They aren't against your Fnatics. They aren't against any of these sort of squads. They're all against, you know, tier 3 shitters, let's say, for the lack of a better term. So I'm not sure whether they will get scared and ban nuke first just to get it off the table, just to get it off the cards, because I think if they got nuke in the pool, Na'Vi would just stomp all over them. So it's a risky pick, but I'm going to go with a scenario that I feel like might be a little bit more likely, where they do actually float nuke. If they did this, then Na'Vi could also turn around and pick nuke just to be like, haha, we're going to kill you. But, you know, I think probably the smarter option would be to ban something like Inferno. It is a traditional QBF pick. Or they could go with a Mirage ban. And I think that might be the safer option as well. Mostly because it's one of QBF's defaults. as of late. It's been one of the maps that they've been picking into series as the first pick, and one of the maps they've had quite a lot of success on, in fact. And it's also one of Na'Vi's worst maps, so, it's not necessarily their permaban. That's Cash. That Honor goes probably towards the second wave, I think. And Cash doesn't really play into QBF's strengths either, so they're kind of okay in that kind of regard. So I think that banning out Mirage would be the best option for Na'Vi. QB5 should ban Overpass. It is their permaban. It's one of Na'Vi's best maps. So another case where these map pools actually fitting well integrated with each other. And I think that a map pool will end up being something along the lines of Inferno, Train, and probably, I think, Cobblestone. Really, to be honest, it's a bit of an awkward one, because the way that I've sort of dreamed up this scenario, and my sort of almost ideal scenario based off the facts and figures that I've researched, the way it should go is that Na'Vi would pick something like Inferno, QB5 would pick Train, then Na'Vi would ban Cash, because that's a really bad map, and then we're left with Cobble and Nuke. Nuke, which isn't a great map for QBF, and Cobble, which is a better map for Na'Vi than it is for QBF. They haven't had the worst results, but again, you go back to that situation where they're just going to stomp you out the server, because they're just so much better at it, and they have much more firepower and better skill power than you as a team. So you got to take a look at that at a very, very awkward spot right here, and that's kind of where the whole map veto falls down for me. I think that Cobblestone would be the best chance for them, because both squads have won it twice in the last 3 months. But even then, it's always there's always a caveat. No matter how I try to get out of this situation, no matter how I try to look at this through QBF side of things, no matter how much I try to find a way out of this one, they beat Spirit and Tangri, Na'Vi beat Space Soldiers and Mouse Sports on LAN. So there's no real way of getting out of it. The caliber of the team for Na'Vi is just too high, and that's why I'm going to predict Na'Vi to win 2-0. 2-1 maybe. I feel like maybe I'm going to change that to 2-1 actually. Very last second, I'll change that to a 2-1 on my little score sheet. So I think that QB5 do have a chance to at least take their pick away, to take Train. They've had some very good upsets against some really high-tier teams, and not just tier 3 shitters. Again, it's been Avangard and Mouse Sports. Avangard not great, but Mouse Sports certainly are great. So they've had some really good opportunities to show up on Train. I think Train would be the one map that they would take away. But outside of that, I can't see them winning Inferno. I can't see them winning on Nuke, and I can't see them winning on Cobble. So 2-1 to Na'Vi. Again, I have a habit of putting QBF down, but for real this time, I think that this is the end of their run. I think this is where they finally fall as legends, and admittedly, that's a pretty fantastic run considering they came into this one barely qualifying from the minor. So I've got to give credit where it's due. QB5 had a fantastic run for this major. I'll be excited to see what they can do, if they can do anything more in the future. Now, G2 versus Cloud9. When this was drawn, I think Yanko said it best, this is going to be a pretty hot shit. And it looks like it'll be a pretty hot shit. These two teams have kind of traded blow for blow over the past. They've had, I think, equal map wins above each other with quite a number of overtimes in between them. So it's kind of difficult to predict, because it's a very, very close affair. And if we had seen them, I think, later on... sorry, I think if we had seen them earlier on in the group stage, I think we did at one point. G2, I think, was the... Yeah, actually, no, yeah, it was in round 1 that G2 managed to beat out Cloud9. I think if we had seen more of that, I think if we had seen a group stage, like a GSL, seeing, whether G2 can beat Cloud9 in a more best-of-3 format, then I probably would have been able to have a more solid prediction. But as it comes right now, my prediction's going for Cloud9. I say this because I'm kind of taking a look at this map pool, and I'm kind of thinking that the ban phase is going to be quite difficult to kind of predict. Again, these two map pools kind of work towards each other. G2 and Cloud9 have their permabans, both of which will probably end up being, banned in the first phase. Permaban on Train, because there's no reason not to. Cloud9 will ban Nuke, and Nuke is actually a really great opportunity to get rid of one of the strong points for G2. G2 have a pretty decent Nuke side, so for Cloud9 to ban that out as already their permaban, makes sense. It makes sense from the likes of Cloud9. And that means that also that both their default picks remain in play. G2 will be able to get Cash. They've already beaten Cloud9 on Cash in the major qualifier, not the major qualifier, the Legends group stage. And Cloud9 will pick Mirage since Train is out. And it's also one of G2's worst maps. So I think this will be a 3-map series. I think that the third map would end up being Cobble. Because Overpass is an awful map for both sides. Inferno and Cobble will be, a fantastic map for the likes of Cloud9. So really, that's kind of the most. Those two maps are really where I see it going down, and I think that's going to be a very weak map for E4G2. I still think that I'll be able to go blow for blow against Cloud9, and it'll be a very close shave. But I'm going to go just based off the map pool alone to the favor of Cloud9. I really think that they have the edge against G2. Didn't have the best of runnings in the group stage, but, you know, they also came back against the likes of a Red Hot Vega Squadron, which was, yeah, I think, a pretty decent showing. I'm not sure whether that's just because Red Hot Squadron. No, I'm not sure that's because Vega Squadron just fizzled out towards the end of the group stage, because they had some ridiculous showings and some ridiculous results. So I'm not sure whether that's just Cloud9 being better or Vega Squadron just, you know, dying out at the very, very last second. But, you know, I'm going to go with Cloud9 on this one. It's going to be a risky one. I still think there's a chance that G2 will take it. But I'm going with our North American buddies. They've also got the home crowd advantage, which is something that we don't actually get to see factored into a lot of North American Counter-Strike. Because this is the first time an American major, that an American team has stood toe-to-toe with another squad. And I'm talking full American, by the way, not just liquids with simple. or, you know, like some of the South American teams. So SK versus Fnatic, and this is another match that will be interesting. I don't know if it will be good, is the problem, though, because SK and Fnatic haven't met each other since ESL 1 Cologne 2017. Their last match was 6 months ago, so we don't really know what to expect. We don't really know what side is going to bring to the table against one another. And Fnatic are not necessarily one of the world beaters anymore, at least, but they are on their way back up there. Golden, bringing his new style, his new structure to the team, has really left us in a situation where Fnatic are very, very good now. Not world beater world, but, you know, they've had 3 top 4 finishes at the end of the last year. And I think that's pretty impressive when you consider that, you know. 1 was at the end of November, 2 in December. Pushed them into the top 5 just about. And I think that with a good run in this tournament, I still think that they might actually be able to keep in that top 5 standing even after this major. So if they can beat SK, if they can upset that one, I think that puts them in a very nice running to claim a top 4 spot. But that remains to be seen at the moment. So you take a look at the pick ban phase, and this is one of the rare exceptions so far this major. We've had 3 individual matches where the map pools sort of feed around each other relatively well. This is one where they actually go, I think, pretty decently to the favour of SK, because SK are such a talented team that they just have such a defined map pool, whereas Fnatic don't really have that just yet. They're not a team with the luxury of being on top anymore. They're a team that are still figuring out their nuances. They're a team that's still figuring out their main playbook in a lot of these maps, and as a result, when you take a look at the statistical range of things, doesn't always lean to great things for the likes of Fnatic, and I feel like a lot of it's going to hinge on whether they can successfully float Nuke. Because Nuke is both sides permaban. That's to start things off. And if SK are able to get the first ban, if they can float Nuke in that case, then Fnatic will kind of be stuck in a situation where they either have to ban Nuke and let SK pick into something like Overpass, which is also a bad Fnatic map, but a default pick for the likes of SK, or you can ban Overpass and potentially risk going into Nuke. And I think if Fnatic pulled Nuke out of the hat, then that would be insane. But if we did get to that territory, it's a seriously risky chance that either side would end up losing very horribly to the other. So I don't think these two squads will try and go for a play like that. I definitely think it's one of the most risky things in this major at this point in time. So I think it's more than likely they'll ban Overpass and then they'll pick into something like Mirage with SK getting into Cobble, which is their second map. At that point, Fnatic are pretty much up shit's creek, because those are the 3 maps that SK are fantastic at: Overpass, Cobble, and Mirage. The fact that we've already got Cobble in, the fact that we've already got Mirage in, doesn't lean to fantastic things for Fnatic. And then at that point, well, what more do you have to try and do there, to try and do here, other than outban Nuke and Cash to leave something like Inferno back in the pool? And yeah, I just don't even see Fnatic getting that far. The first 2 maps seem extremely difficult. And if Fnatic get first ban, I think that probably the better thing might be for them to ban Nuke first, or to try and get rid of that kind of thing first, or I don't know, it's very weird, because again, no matter what you do, you can ban Nuke first and SK will still have the advantage on it. You can float Nuke and SK will still have the advantage on it, because they'll still have a way to get the likes of Cobble and Overpass and Mirage in. Fnatic will most likely be banning Overpass because it is their permaban, or secondary permaban outside of Nuke. And then SK would probably end up banning Nuke anyway, just like, just leave it out, guys. Let's just get into this one. Then Fnatic pick Mirage, SK pick Cobble, and then we're back in the same sort of situation. Those are my two sort of timelines, and my two sort of realities of where that will go, and both of them lead to a 2-0 for SK. Unfortunately for Fnatic, that's where I see them stopping, unfortunately. I just don't see them being able to get much further than that. And it's a shame, too, because I was really hoping they'd be able to get to a semi-final placement in this tournament. I feel like they could have had a very good, deep run in the Major. And if they had drawn against someone else, then maybe we might be looking at a different story. If they've drawn against QB Fire, for instance, and I feel like they will be able to swash QB Fire completely out of service. So it's a shame, but that's the way I think it's going to go. SK 2-0 in that particular quarter-final. So, yeah. Again, I'm a little bit disappointed in that one because it's a little bit anticlimactic after I've gone through so many good matches. We get to that, and while it would be an interesting match on paper, like, when you take a look at in between the lines, everything just seems to go riding up SK's favour. So disappointing way to end it, but that is my analysis done for the quarter-final matches. We're now going to go jump over to the game, and I'm going to show you exactly how my ideal bracket would go. Now, keep in mind that for this next one, a lot of these picks are going to be based off educated guessing rather than me actually doing genuine analysis. Any number of these matches could go swing either way, at which point my picks are completely fucked. And I'm also playing for the picks as well. I'm not playing based off of what I think is actually going to happen. I'm going to play based off what's going to be the most likely to get me more points. If there's some results that don't quite fit where I want them to, then that's kind of the way it kind of goes. So let's go ahead and jump over to Counter-Strike. I'm going to show you how my ideal playoff bracket will be. Okay, so we're here in the Pick'em arena, I guess you could say, the page where you can lock in your picks for the CSGO Major. So got our 4 victors as predicted by myself earlier on. FaZe, Na'Vi, Cloud9, SK. And I'm going to be making some decisions based off of how I feel the overall how I feel the bracket will go. And we've got FaZe Clan versus Na'Vi, Cloud9 versus SK. And the great thing about this semi-final bracket is that you can actually kind of predict based off of, just general common sense where these kind of games will go. As well as that, you can factor in a lot of upsets that could be coming out here. Like, for example, if QB Fire do manage to upset Na'Vi, I have a doubt that they'll be able to face up against FaZe Clan. If Mousesports come up against Na'Vi or QB Fire, I have a feeling that Mousesports are probably going to go through anyway. So in that case, you would push something like FaZe Clan further forward because, there's no real dream scenario where you could see them losing to Na'Vi or QB Fire. And the same thing over on this side of the bracket as well. Cloud9 and Fnatic, I feel like the only real chance they have to upset someone like SK in a best of 3 would be literally if SK stopped giving a shit. We already know that they are very angry about the way that this major has gone for them. I'm being unable to play with bolts. Having a lot of issues around them. We've seen them on Twitter, having whatever tantrum they want to have, and you kind of factor that in, maybe that they don't think the major is truly legit, as several people have pointed out. But even then, the star power they have on this side is anything more to crush out Fnatic or Cloud9 or hell, even G2 Esports. So you're just going to take a look at this side of the bracket and you can't see any other situation where someone like SK Gaming would end up losing out. So I push them forward into the grand finals up against SK and FaZe. And this is where it really gets tricky. Yeah? This is the only part where it's really, difficult for me to break down, because in order for me to confidently take a pick, it kind of comes up to whether or not I'm willing to go out and do the research on how many times these guys have faced off. But in general, SK do have the advantage above FaZe Clan. The question at the moment is, will they have the same sort of chemistry as they did with Phelps? Phelps is a very capable player. FaZe Clan have had a lot of opportunities to nuance their way to victory. And I feel like that they might be the ones to take that victory. Of course, we'll take a look at the form. They've already beaten SK once on one map, which is nothing major to go by, but it is the sort of like pace setter for the rest of the major. I think that this time FaZe do have the opportunity and do have the advantage up against SK Gaming. They've had a lot of time to do their homework. They've had a lot of time to prepare for this playoff bracket, and I feel like that of all the teams that would be ready to face up against SK Gaming in the finals, it would be someone like a FaZe Clan. So that's where I'm going. I'm pinning FaZe to go all the way. Na'Vi and Cloud9 will stop at the quarters. SK will stop at the semis. And Fnatic, G2, QB Fire, and Mousesports will all stop at the quarterfinals. So there we go. That's my picks. That's my analysis. Let me know what you think and what your particular thoughts on this major are. Do you think this is a real major? I certainly do. Do you think the FaZe Clan are going all the way? Let me know all in the comments and on all the social media links as well. So thank you very much for joining me, and we'll see you back here probably in the next couple of days. I have a video on DreamHack Leipzig from the Rocket League portion of things coming out very soon, so I look forward to that. And hopefully after the major is done, I can do a little bit of a retrospective look back and see exactly what went down.